He's gonna be a wild man if he's anything like his dad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Welcome back to the Constant Pursuit podcast. I'm your host, Stanley Chock, and today we talk with an old friend, Tai Mahawon. We talk about how he felt rejected by his family due to the decisions that he was making. We talk about how our values stay the same, but our methods change. And we also talk about how his pursuit of becoming a worship pastor has quickly turned into an audio engineer. It's a good episode. Let's get right to it. Today we have a very special guest, an old friend that I haven't seen in who knows how long, many years. We have Tai Mahawon. Tai, say hi to everybody.
Hey guys.
So Tai and I, how did we meet? We met in PBC, obviously, right?
We did.
We did. That was the culmination with a lot of, I guess, people that I talked to or had some sort of relationship with. But we go back. I don't even know how long ago that was. PBC was what for you? When was the last time you? Yeah, what was that?
2012 was when I moved to America. So I think it was after my first year was when I met you.
2012.
I think you came.
Oh yeah. I came. So I left or I graduated high school 2013.
Yeah,
and then I came. I don't know if we knew each other the first year, but I came in 2013 to Oregon.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. Anyway.
God,
but
that's years.
No, yeah, that's way too. I mean, honestly, that's 10 years. I'm looking at the calendar right now. 10 years, pretty much.
That's wild.
But Tai, kind of introduce yourself and the things you're doing right now, maybe like your occupation, where you're currently living, what you're kind of doing, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So me and my wife, we live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And she, her and I both work for Elevation Worship, which is the label side of the church. So it's two separate entities. So I'm one of the studio engineers that work on all the albums and stuff, capture, editing, all that fun stuff. And she is the project manager for the label, actually. So she project manages all the videographers, the designers. But yeah, she manages everything that you see visually. So she's boss woman. She's the one that keeps everybody in line.
Nice.
Her boss, his name's Chris Dobson. He's the video director of all the albums that you see, all the videos. Chris Dobson's wife, she manages me and the studio team. So my wife manages him, his wife manages me. So they got hired.
Yeah.
And so, which is perfect because I don't think any of us could have handled our wives managing us directly. They already do that at home. So that's my occupation. I'm a audio engineer. I mix. I do broadcast audio. I've worked with quite a few people. Whether it's Bethel Music, whether it's Upper Room, whether it's Transformation. It's like so just lots of church world stuff. So, but my main occupation is capturing live albums and mixing them, and doing all the nitty gritty stuff.
How did that even start? Because I remember when you were here, I don't think you even dabbled into that yet at all.
No, at all.
Right? You didn't go even into that at all. Like your career started pretty much in Bethel, or when you went to Bethel, right?
Yeah. Bro, all I did with my laptop was us play League of Legends, and then we I'm trying to remember, did you hop onto that Bitwig train with Micah?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we were trying to make beats in the lobby of the church. Um, God,
Mm,
I think that was the extent of my, or like, man, because I never thought I was going to do that. Because I mean, the whole goal, like, I don't know if you remember, was I was just wanting to become a worship pastor and then move back to Thailand. That was the thing, was finish all 4 years of school and then move back.
mhm,
Um, and but for some reason, I always dabbled in production a little bit.
mhm,
And yeah, it never became real until I was down at Bethel. So I walked in. It's kind of so random because I walked in and I heard how Bethel sounded
mm,
live in their room, and it was probably one of the best mixes I've ever heard,
yeah,
and still to this day, probably one of the best mixes I've ever heard. Um, and yeah, like, and I just started living my life down there. Like, did first year, volunteered a little bit here and there. Um, but until I started getting messages from back home, like whether it was Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia,
mhm,
Philippines, they would, like, people that I knew from before would text me on Facebook, would send me a message and ask me, like, how do they record their guitars? Why does it sound like this? Like, why does it sound so good? And I started getting really convicted because I was in the room with some of the best in the church world. Like, I was hanging out with them, I was friends with them, but I was getting really convicted because I was in the room with them, but I wasn't learning anything from them. And so it just became this thing where um, the Lord was like, I place you in these rooms, not for you, um, not just for you. And so yeah, so kind of during that process, I would, every single day I would ask one question from each one of these guys. It's like, okay, how do you record acoustic guitars? Like, how do you mix vocals? And then that night I would
mhm,
go and I'll hop onto FaceTime or hop onto like a Facebook video. And I'd be like, guys, this is how they do it. It's like, this is how they make acoustic sound like this, da da da. And so, for lack of better terms, no pun intended, but I was like, for the sake of the world, I'm just going to learn, because online resources weren't popular then. Like, it wasn't really a thing,
mm,
especially worship music.
mhm,
So I would be this connecting point between like the churches in Asia that would most likely never get the chance to be in the same room as these guys. And so they would tell me how to do it. I would quickly just give all this knowledge away as fast as I could.
mhm,
And um and during that process, I fell in love with audio, like the idea of
mm,
capturing, the idea of mixing. And it's like, never really cared about it. I didn't grow up dreaming I would be in audio. One of the
right,
most unseen group of people in the church.
mhm,
Um, but then from the process of learning and teaching, I loved it. And so
mhm,
that's kind of how it started. And I would wake up at 5 a.m. to help set up the Civic Auditorium, because that's where first year was held, was at the Civic Auditorium. We'd roll in at 5 a.m., set up the whole stage.
mhm,
I just kept volunteering, but it was this one guy. His name is Weston, and Weston Clark. He was one of the main engineers there at the time. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I'm a visual learner. Um, can I watch what you do?
mm.
And I'll wrap cables for you all day. Like, I'll wrap cables. I'll like move things around. I'll just do whatever needs to be done."
Mhm,
And he looked at me and he said, "How about this? I'll do one better. I'll teach you."
nice,
Um,
yeah,
so he was just so willing to give everything away, like so welcoming. And then now we're really good friends. He lives in Portland. He
Mm-hmm.
lives in Portland, but like him and I would fly out and do conferences together now.
Mm.
Years, like from, but it was because of kind people like that was why I got into audio. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, if all I do is learn in rooms that most people would pay huge money for, give anything for, if I can learn, I want to be able to give away. And so ever since that day, I can't really explain it, but it's just been the Lord's favor of I keep showing up in rooms, and every time I do show up in these rooms with these amazing people,
Mm-hmm.
a boldness, it just feels like a boldness that comes on me to ask questions and
Mm-hmm.
not be afraid to look like a fool. Like even though I'm very aware of like, okay, we're working right now. We're not, this isn't chit chat time. This isn't,
Yeah, yeah.
so I'm aware of that, the professionalism, but I'm just able, like, I'm just not scared to ask questions because I know it's not for me and
Mm.
never for me. And I feel like the minute I stop, that is the minute I stop growing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
the favor might stop.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
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 So that's how I got into audio, was for other people. It was
Mm.
it was never for me, and it's like it sounds weird, but it's like, yeah, that's where it started.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned it earlier. You wanted to be basically a worship pastor, right?
Yeah,
That was kind of where it went. And looking at what a worship pastor is, and then looking at almost completely the opposite, somebody who is, like you said, in the some of the most unseen people in, I guess, not the church, but like audio and doing and being behind the scenes and making everything work. You feel
yeah.
like that was God wanting to work on maybe your character, or do you feel like, oh, maybe, I don't know how you felt when back then, but maybe when you were wanting to be a worship pastor, that it was a lot about, oh, I want to be on stage, or maybe I want people to see me. um how does that Do you feel like it's something that God was working on you, that like, oh, yes, maybe this is what you want, but this is kind of where I'm leading you? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. So I think like because my entire idea of ministry was kind of what my parents instilled into me,
Right.
which was, the pastor's son. Like I feel like this is the typical like pastors like kids like spiel.
Right.
uh it's like the expectation is there like a
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
times, and the pressure is there.
Hmm.
And so the idea was, okay, my brother was going to become the senior pastor of a church in Thailand, and then I was going to become the worship pastor. We are going to be this
Hmm.
duo. We're
Hmm.
going to start the first worship school that Thailand's ever had. Like, and it's going to become this thing that impacts all of Asia.
Hmm.
And so when we started going down this road, like the Lord really started working on my heart when I was in first year, because during first year, I was like, Lord, like I think for a solid 6 months, I cried myself to sleep every single night. Because there was quite a bit of pain, because my parents like fully expected me to come back. Like we're really good now. Like they've seen the
Yeah.
Lord in my life, and they're like, at the time it was like really hard because they're like,
Mm.
oh, you got stuck in America. America doesn't need another audio guy, doesn't need another worship leader. It's like
Uh-huh.
America has plenty. We don't.
Yeah.
Like it sounds extreme, but it felt like I had a piece of bread standing in front of a starving child and chose not to give it.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to choose not to feed you. Is I'm going to choose to not bring everything that I've learned in America to benefit the churches back
Yeah.
home. So like I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so my brain goes very extreme.
Yeah, yeah,
With analogies, is like it just felt so strong. And so for 6 months, I cried myself to sleep almost every single night. And I was like, Lord, didn't you call me to the nations? Didn't you call me to do this? It's like, is this not you? Was my whole life a lie?
yeah.
And the Lord just kindly just told me, he's like, the dreams and passions I gave to you, but the way you want it to happen, it's always been you and your family.
Mm.
And it hit me hard. And I was like, okay, Lord. I was like, so am I just going to be stuck in America? Is this going to be it?
Yeah.
And to like fast forward, because like that's like such a very, very long story. But fast forward to now is I've been able to invest into over 25 countries, 48 states, and 375 churches later.
Yeah.
And in the span of 5 years.
Yeah.
And it, like looking back, I was like, dang, Lord, if I stayed in Thailand and just went my own way, obviously the Lord can make anything happen however way he wants to. But I was like, if I stayed in Thailand, if I moved to Thailand, went back, it's like, would I have been able to invest in this many people? And then like and be able to be there for a lot of churches, a lot of hurting people, like
Right.
in ministry. And so, yeah, it was wild because, like, yeah, it was one of those things where to answer your question about that whole thing was my mom used to say, this is an old Baptist saying, is like when you ride your donkey to the up to the river. I might butcher this story, but if you ride your donkey and your
Hmm.
donkey is called a Lutheran, like whatever, it's like you're
Yeah.
you rode that religion to it got you to the river, and
Uh-huh.
then right before you cross the river and then encounter God in a different way, where you jump on a horse is a
Mm.
different mode of transportation in the same journey.
Mm.
Do you beat your donkey to death? Like, do you just get rid of it? Like, or do
Right.
you honor or
Mm.
respect it got you this far? And
Right.
so that's what I felt like. It's like the the order. If we're going with the what do you call it? The speculated church ladder.
Uh-huh.
Used to be a church corporate ladder, whatever. You have like the
Yeah.
senior pastor, assistant pastor,
Yeah.
worship
Yeah.
pastor.
Yeah.
It's like you have all this. So at first, it's like, okay, I was going to be a worship pastor.
Hmm.
I poured everything I could into it, learning everything I could at PBC.
Hmm.
Never got, never was good enough to sing on stage at chapel. And so, like, oh, maybe I'm just meant to be a worship leader. So I
Okay.
stepped down from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
leader. And then after a little bit, I think this was during the season with you and Micah, was I would lead worship, but then I would play keys, I would program keys
Mm.
and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So maybe I'm just a worship musician.
Mm.
And I poured everything I could into it, learn everything I could about Ableton, Bitwig, Logic, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then from a worship musician, it's like, oh, maybe I'm just a person who produces. Maybe I'm just a person who just wraps cables and mixes front of house. Maybe I'm just a broadcast engineer. Like it just kept going down, like
Hmm.
what the ladder. And all of a sudden I ended up in mixing and like in the studio in broadcast. And I was like, man, pursuing being a worship pastor taught me so many tools.
Mm.
pursuing being a worship leader taught me so many tools on how to lead a team on
Yeah.
stage, learn the
Right.
language of the other musicians. Being a worship musician taught me a bunch of tools. And it's like every single de-escalating, like of or whatever the word is, like stepping down,
Mm-hmm.
the mode of transportation was changing,
Yeah.
but the same anointing and calling was still there. And I
Right.
didn't realize it until way later
Yeah.
was, oh, the thing that has always been constant was I love people to the best of my ability. Our, not with you guys, but also like everybody else, it's like late night talks about the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the pastoral heart
Yeah.
that I didn't realize I was carrying, the ability
Mm.
to disciple, to call people higher, and to
Yeah.
love on people, but never ever moving from my convictions.
Yeah.
So it's like how I love people never changed, how I disciple people never changed, how I pastor people never changed. But the mode of transportation on how it was used changed
Mm.
so many times.
Yeah. That's good.
And I was like, oh wow, my calling is the destination, but my purpose is who I am. My
Mm.
purpose in life is soon to be a dad. My
Yeah.
purpose in life is a husband. My
Mm-hmm.
purpose in life is a friend.
Yeah.
Purpose in life is to witness and to preach the gospel. This
Mm.
is my purpose. I'm like, but the conversation always comes as like, if it's my giftings, my calling is like, because I'm good at a few things,
Mm-hmm.
but God, I hope I'm not called to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, just because I'm good at doing something, it's like, okay, is my entire calling and purpose wrapped around just because I'm good at it?
Mm,
Uh,
right.
so yeah, so that's a long answer to it, but
Uh-huh.
like what the Lord taught me was you're you're supposed to be constant no matter which sin, what season you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Like the same way that He's constant in every single season is like my purpose and what I'm called to do is never changing, but
Mm-hmm.
how I do it. Like values will always remain the same, but methods will change, and
Yeah.
methods
Yep.
always change as we grow.
Mm-hmm.
We let life change, but the minute I allow whether it's success or failure affect how I love my wife and how I love my soon-to-be son, and then people
Mm-hmm.
around me,
Mm-hmm.
I, I feel I've forgotten the main thing.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's powerful. I think when after I had Hema, our
yeah.
daughter, I I think I was going or kind of trying to figure out in my head, okay, what do I need to do? Do I need, what is God, what am I here to do? Because I still have a very, I guess, career driven mind.
Yeah.
The things that I do, and maybe it's you as well, but I think like, okay, my business, I want to do this, this, and this. I want to accomplish this. I want to try and go to this place. I want to talk with this people. I want to learn about this thing. And there's this, when we're thinking about our career specifically, I guess,
Mhm.
it was very, to me, I'm like, oh, very, very clear. Like, oh, okay, these are the things that I want to do. And I remember I was frustrated at something I forget what I was frustrated. I think I was just frustrated at God, and I was like, God, like I don't, you know, I want this I want this business to grow. I want this to go somewhere. I don't know if, if this is where I'm supposed to be, if I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying these words to me kind of. kind of in this, honestly, it was in this room, and I was kind of just walking back and forth. But he said these words. He said, "Don't forget what I've given you."
Yeah.
And just those words stuck out to me, so I wrote them down. I wrote it on that whiteboard.
Yeah.
Don't forget what I've given you. And that was after, I believe that was after our daughter was born, and I was like, it kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, God, you've given me an amazing wife. You've given us a daughter. You've provided for us, like. And it was almost those things that it was like left on the side. I kind of pushed them to the side and was
Yeah.
thinking more about my career and more about what I can accomplish, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about the things that God has already given me, and that to not forget about those things. And um, but I think what you're saying is super powerful. How I really like what you said. You said your your values never change, but your methods always change.
Yeah.
Those things are always changing and always growing, to be honest. And
Yep.
I think that's cool. It's crazy. That's, I mean, how you got to where you are now. It's kind of insane. Like, it's cool. It's cool to see what you're doing, um, and knowing that it's not for you, it's for the Lord. And
Yeah.
knowing, like, okay, you know, God, I thought I was supposed to be doing this, but God quickly reminds us, like, hey, you're doing exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
It just might not look exactly like how you think it'll look.
Yeah.
Um, but no, that's awesome. Uh, what was? I don't think we really got like a. Give us like a quick, I guess, rundown on like your testimony before, you know, before all of, uh, I guess, coming to America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Is so the very short version, which is still like decent amount of time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like short version, it's like I feel like it's all my friends have heard this. Like they know I love culture. They know I love just history, because history is what makes us. And I heard somebody say this once. It's like your history is his story.
Mm, mm,
Like, so it's the Lord's story that he's writing. He has been writing your entire life.
mm,
Like, so your history, whether it's bad or good, is the Lord writing out his story, his redemption story in your life, in your
mhm,
journey. And so that's why I love it, because history shapes how we view the world. History shapes
mhm,
how we treat people, whether it's good or bad. And so I so my parents moved to Thailand when I was 6 months old, um, and my brother was 2 years old. So my parents moved there because they were like, okay, we feel called to go back. My dad's from that part of the world. So my mom was one of the very first white missionaries to that part of Thailand back in like the late 70s, 80s.
mhm,
And so that's where she met my dad. And
mm,
fast forward 10 years, they got married. Stateside in Tulsa, Oklahoma was where they met. Not where they met, but like kind of where the romantic side of their story started.
mhm,
Um, and then they lived in Seattle, Washington. So I was born in Tacoma, Washington, 1994. Um, and so, yeah, so my parents just felt called to go back. My dad always wanted to go back. My mom, of course, like she was already called there. Like she was
mhm,
already called there like in earlier. And so, yeah, so I grew up in 3.5 hours north of Chiang Mai, Thailand.
mhm,
So 3 hours from the closest city, way in the middle of nowhere in the jungles of Thailand. So I grew up there. My parents had an orphanage. They still do. All my family lives over there except me. I'm the only Mahawon here. And so yeah, so growing up there was like always it was interesting. It's probably the coolest I think life that I could have ever asked for.
Hmm.
Because it's just stories packed on stories, packed on stories. It's like it's not just stories about my life, it's stories about how so many lives were affected. And so that's why I remember the story so well, and I love sharing those stories. People are like, "Man, Ty, have known you for 5 years. It feels like you have another story that just like comes out of nowhere." I'm like, "Yeah, because it's not just a story that impacted me. Like it affects people's lives." And so yeah, so growing up, my parents had an orphanage there, and they help kids out of sex trafficking or boy soldiers from the Myanmar side,
Right.
because they had opium warlords. They had like rebel soldiers and all this stuff that they had kids from the ages of 6 to 12, like in the army. And so a lot of the guys I grew up with, like at the age of 8, they've already killed someone. So it's like it was really cool to grow up with brothers that like my parents tried to teach me how to have like compassion in the middle of kids that had they would always say this, we have no tears left to cry. So it's like
Mm.
they're very stoic, like because they think like not showing any feelings, kind of very Asian, like very Asian in that
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
just very stoic. It's like can't show weakness, and especially how they lived. And so my parents tried to teach me compassion, like how to, instead of like just cool, I'll just bulldoze my way through things. And so by growing up, it's like my I used to, man, I used to like go on these hikes up into the mountain, and I had this iPod video, which my dad
Uh-huh.
still has, and I told him to bring it. They're coming next month,
Okay, nice.
but he came to my parents came to visit me and my wife in Oklahoma like about 3 years ago, 3 4 years ago, and like the Lord was just reminding me of like where I came from, and I sometimes I forget, like sometimes in kind of what you were talking about is like in the pursuit of my quote unquote career, it's
Hmm.
like I just always have to be reminded of where I came from and
Yeah.
to never take these things for granted.
Mm.
And so my dad brought this iPod video with him, and I don't know why I just gave it back to him for him to take back. I should have just kept it because he was giving it back to me.
Hmm.
Uh, but we were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my dad came out of the back room and was like, "Hey," he always calls me Bubba, like,
Hmm.
"Hey, Bubba, I have I have your iPod." And I saw it. It still had the same headphone. It's just like dirty, like nasty, like cable headphones still attached to it. I was like, dang. And I felt the Lord really strongly just remind me, just told me, I want to spend time with you tomorrow morning. And I was like so curious at why. It's kind of like those moments when someone's like, "Hey, we need to talk, but let's talk in 2 days," and you're like, "Okay, what the frick did I just do?" Like,
Yeah.
well, like I don't like sitting idle like that. It's like you don't tell me we need to talk, and then give me a hint of what subject we're talking about.
Hmm.
Um, so the next day I told your mom I'm going to go to a coffee shop just by myself. I'm like, I feel like the Lord's wanting to say a few things to me. So I went to a coffee shop and I took the iPod with me and I started playing one of the Hillsong United albums, one of the old ones. It was the United We Stand record. And it was so weird. It just felt like the Lord was just like giving me a bunch of visions of my past history. And it's just like the moments that I'll be sitting in the middle of the jungles, like in the back of my house, and just closing my eyes and daydreaming that one day someone like me could do something like this. Is like, because at the time, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time, there was definitely no Southeast Asian doing anything to that level.
No.
Until now, it's like the only people you'll find is possibly an American Filipino. I'm like, you're not going to see Malaysians, Indonesians, and stuff like that. It's like I work with everyone, so it's like I still have not seen it. So I was like, Lord, maybe one day. We used to say this phrase every time we would learn like guitar parts and stuff like that back home. We would always say this, which is so toxic. We would say, we'll never be as good as the white people. Like, because we just never had the ability to do it. I didn't know what a dotted eighth delay was. So when they would play The Time Has Come, that guitar part, what kind of witchcraft is happening?
That's funny, actually.
That guy's picking is so good.
Yeah.
And then when I came to America, I actually saw Hiro Nagai. He was playing that part, but his guitar pick was just doing this.
Right.
It's like,
what's happening right now?
I was like, what witchcraft is this? I'm like, teach me. But we kept saying that phrase, not realizing it was limiting us. And so I would just daydream. Of all these moments. Like, and I'll like, like sometimes when you're a kid, you like picture being that person. Like I would like picture myself on the stage with some of these guys and stuff like that, and that we're friends, like all these things, like just create weird scenarios, fake realities. But I knew that I'm like, there's no way this will ever happen. And yeah, like, so the Lord showed me that flashback, and then it just came, and then I just came back to looking at the iPod, and I was like, Lord, why did you just show me that, and why am I here with my iPod? And the Lord said, I want you to scroll through it, scroll through the names, scroll through the artists. And I start scrolling through, and then halfway I start tearing up, and I start like really start being overwhelmed by his goodness. And I counted, it was 90% of all the artists that I used to listen to and still listen to. I've worked with, I have their phone numbers, I hang out with them, we talk about life, help them through, talk about how they're like going through their divorces, like how they were redeemed with their divorces. It's like, and I just started weeping, and the Lord's like, he's like, you never knew the goodness that I had for you in your life. And he's like, and it took this long for me to show you. Because he knew, like, because I'm a very confident person, and confidence overextended becomes pride. And so it's like, and so he knew that if this was too early, it would have been a lot of pride in my life. And now some of my friends will tell me, they're like, Tai, just own it. Because I'm like, yeah, it was me mixing drums 6 hours a day for me to be good at mixing drums. It was my time, my effort, but it was God's grace that got me there. It's like I did my part, and the Lord did his part, because I couldn't do what he could do. Like, all I could do was just pour my time into it. Like, that's it. And so I'm like, no, I'm not the ultra spiritual person that's like, it's all God, it's all God. No, it was my time
Mm-hmm.
with God's grace.
Mm.
I'm like, and like Paul says, like, I will always boast in my weakness and I will always boast in the Lord. And so for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good because of God. Is I have this opportunity because of God. I'm like, I'm not the best. I'm far from the best. I'm like, but man, are my friends the best?
Mm.
Like, because all my friends are the best in the world. And I'm like, and I get to call them friend and I
Mm.
get to love them. And like, yeah, Ty doesn't know everything in the world, but put off Ty's friends in the same room, they'll know everything in the world.
Yeah.
I'm strong because of my friends, and I'm confident because of my friendships and
Mm.
my relationships. So, but yeah, that's my testimony with Thailand was, yeah, through all that. And then I was 17 years old. I was diagnosed like unofficially, but diagnosed with leukemia because my white blood cell counts were so high.
Mm-hmm.
And my body, the doctor would keep saying that your body is slowly dying on you, but we don't know why. Like, we're trying to figure out. So this is 17. Sorry, this whole story pivoted hard.
You're good. You're
Um,
good.
and so my lungs started collapsing on me. So I had to give up sports. I had to give up singing. I had to give up everything. And there wasn't much for me in life if there wasn't sports and singing. And so, yeah, at the age of 17, was diagnosed with that. And I was actually not living life right with the Lord. I was definitely in my testimony, like sleeping around with my girlfriend back at the back in the day. And so as a pastor's kid doing all this is like, it was wild. And the Lord told my mom, hey, by this time next year, Ty will not be alive. Like, it's so extreme. Like, Ty will not be alive by this
Mm.
time next year if you don't send him to America.
Mm.
So coincidentally, PBC takes spring semesters because my
Uh-huh.
mom, I can't get him to any school in America because every school starts in the fall.
Yeah.
And Pastor Jesse in Portland was like, hey, they actually have a spring semester. So literally within like 3 weeks, they put me on a plane and I was shipped to America. And so, but yeah, and that was actually, it was 6 months into Bible school was when I gave my life to the Lord for real. As
Wow.
as the pastor's kid, I feel like I'm baptized like 8 times a year.
Yep.
Like, I'm always there taking communion because it's the best snack during the church.
Yep.
Time. I was good at all that stuff, but it was it was I just hit rock bottom because of my
Mhm.
health,
Yeah.
everything. And so I was listening to a song called "The Anthem" by Jake Hamilton. Um, Jesus Culture Live in Chicago is off of that album, and I just got down on my knees and I was like, Lord, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm.
I'm like, I need you. I'm like, if like I did the one thing my everybody always told me not to do is make a deal with the Lord. Uh, like, and I was like, Lord, if you heal me, I only want to use my giftings for you. I'm like, that's it. I'm like,
Mhm.
please heal me. And at this point, if I walked upstairs, I would like cough until I threw up. Like, I
Yeah.
could not breathe. And so woke up the next morning, and you remember dorm 4, all those
Mhm.
stairs, all
Yep.
the way down to the cafeteria. I walked down all those stairs and I walked straight through those cafeteria doors, and it hit me. I wasn't coughing.
Mm.
I turned around, ran all the way up those flight of stairs, all the way to dorm 4, and ran back down, no coughing. So I ran straight to sign up for vocal lessons. And I went to the gym for the first time that day, in two years. And then I went and got my body checked out, my blood tested, and the doctor said, we can't find anything wrong. The only thing they did find wrong or not healed at the time was my lungs. So as my lungs were collapsing on itself, it just stopped. So my lungs, as far as I know right now, I'm pretty sure I can go get it checked out, but I checked it like once a year for like 4 or 5 years. But my lungs were partially collapsed. And it stayed that way. And I developed the way that I talk right now. Like I developed the very grovelly, monotone, like type voice of talking. And I feel like I'm always running out of breath. But when I would preach or when I would lead worship, my lungs would fully open up and I would be able to do what I needed to do. And I was always confused because I grew up word of faith. So it's like, oh, why would God partially heal? Is he not strong enough to heal everything?
Yeah, right.
It's just like, and I was like, man, Lord, with this limitation, I know for a fact it can never be me that do what I do. It's like anytime I'm standing in front of people preaching or singing, I'm like, man, it's not my talent. I'm like, Lord, if you don't show up, this is gonna suck. It's like I can't hit these notes. It's like, Lord,
Yeah.
up. And then I heard a sermon by actually our favorite charismatic evangelist, Benny Hinn. He preached on a subject about the anointing in you and the anointing on you is two different things. So in, I believe, Mark, it talks about the anointing that's in you that empowers you. But then throughout the entire Old Testament is when the Spirit comes upon someone, they're able to do something that they're not able to do, whether it's a boldness, whether it's a strength, whether it's whatever. And he's like, you will be anointed to do many things as a follower of Christ. He's like, but there are certain moments you're like, I can't do this. And then the Spirit comes upon you and all of a sudden you can do it. And you're like, how did I just do that? How did I have the strength to, for my instance, how did I have the strength to only run with 2 hours of sleep, praying for people after people after people after people, and then just seeing miracles come through? It's just like, I can't do that. Like, that's not, nor have I seen miracles like that since.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, wait, why don't I see that every single day? But I saw it in the Philippines. It's like the amount of miracles that happen. It's like, Lord, I don't know. All I know was you showed up.
Right.
Not my gifting. It was not my calling. It was your anointing in the moment. And so, but yeah, that's kind of my story of Thailand to America.
What would you say is one of the hardest things that you've ever faced? What was one of your hardest challenges in your life? That you can give a brief summary on.
I would say the hardest thing I've ever gone through was when, after I moved to America, the truth came out with like just the way I was living my life secretly in Thailand. Not just me, but a bunch of the brothers I grew up with. Like, we were all just sneaking around, just trying to do whatever we can. And So what was really hard, and like we've had to go through our um reconciliation, but um my dad didn't like talk to me for quite a while.
Mm,
He did the typical Asian disowning thing for a season.
yeah.
uh it's like, you bring shame to me and my family. And through that, my mom wouldn't talk to me either. Like, even if she did, it was like very, very closed off, because it's like, it's her husband. Like, but that is like really hurt. And she was really hurt too. And it was really, really hard because my brother was in school at the time. And my brother, like, was the golden child. He was the guy who never did anything wrong. And it's like, it was one of those things. And like, him and our relationship is so good now. Like,
Mm.
but like at the time, it was, he was supposed to go back and take over the ministry, and then Tai ruined it all. Like,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
I ruined it all. And so it was like, it was really hard because he he blamed me for a lot of the stuff, and I was really angry. And I was like, man, I was like, if this is how Christians are, I'm out. It's like,
Yeah.
I was taught that this is not what you should do.
Yeah.
And it's like, phrases would be thrown out. It's like, you ruined 15 years of ministry that
Mm,
mom and dad built.
wow.
And so it was just this thing where I'm like, God, I'm done. I don't. I wrote a very cheesy song at the time,
Hmm.
because one of my what do they call it, extra credit classes, one of
Uh. Okay. Yeah.
songwriting.
Okay.
And so I wrote a song called Crossroads, and the main phrase in the chorus was, should I take the short way somewhere where I have no idea where I'm going to show up? Or should I take the long way, which I know will lead me to home? And it had to deal with, should I run away? Should I call it quits? Live my life the way I want to? No
Yeah.
accountability to anyone, the Lord, nobody. Or do I go through this season of repentance, reconciliation, forgiveness, and restoration?
Hmm.
So I knew the long way was the right choice,
Yeah. Yeah.
or one was the right choice, but I didn't want that. And
Mm.
so the only reason why, one of the biggest reasons why I stuck around, was because of a man named Jesse Tricola, which I know that you know him too. It's like,
Hmm.
he he would sit right next to me as my dad's yelling at me over the phone, and he would have his hand on my shoulder, and it's like, as a man, you're gonna have to take this.
Mm.
It's like, because you did hurt people, you did hurt a lot of people. Sin was real,
Yeah.
like everything was real. So as a man, you're gonna have to take this.
Yeah.
But as a man of God, you're going to learn how to forgive, and you're going to learn how to restore, and how to put your trust in the Lord, not
Mm.
in whether people forgive you or not,
Yeah.
but you have to do the right thing.
Right.
So he was there during those seasons, and he walked me through it, and he was the example of Jesus at the time for me.
Yeah.
Is, oh wow, he loves me despite. I was always the weird one. I mean, you remember my blonde hair, like dyed my hair blonde, uh, skinny jeans with like studded boots, is like beanie,
Oh yeah. That's
and
so funny.
would always get roasted by the old people in the church for wearing a beanie. Um, but every single time, Pastor Jesse would just smile and look at me. He's like, Tai, I'm not sweating it because I know who you are. Like, you can wear whatever you want. I know that you still love the Lord, and I know who you are.
Yeah.
And so you always reminded me of that. So that was the hardest season of my life because I almost stepped away from saying yes to the Lord and just giving up on Christianity in general.
Yeah.
But it was him, and the redemption story has been so beautiful and has been so great. And I mean, during that season, you guys came into my life too, and so it's like it was really incredible friendship that I really needed at the time, whether you guys realized it or not. It was like it was hard because I mean I was really good at faking it till you make it.
Sure. Yeah.
It was like no, it was a hard season, and I am the man I am today for my wife, as imperfect as I am as a husband, but she is always able to look at me. It's like even when he falls short, I know Tai is righteous, and I know Tai has character, and Tai has integrity, and I can trust him. Even if he doesn't wash the dishes that night and wash it.
Yeah. All right, Tai, we'll close it up because I don't want to use too much of your time. But what if you could tell younger Tai one thing? You could only tell him one thing, knowing all that you know now, all the experiences you've gone, all the experiences you've gone through, all the things you've learned, all that stuff. What would that one thing be? What would a piece of advice you would want to give younger Tai? Let's say 17-year-old Tai. What would that be?
I think I would say is be intentional with who's in front of you. Don't get so caught up looking ahead that you forget everyone who's in front of you and around you.
Yeah.
There's so many relationships that like has kind of like fallen away because I was so focused on career. I was so focused on pursuing. I get hyper focused on stuff, and then so got so focused, and it's like I'm like, man, it says like one day when we stand before the Lord is like many is healed in my name, many is cast out demons, many is saved in my name. But depart from me because I never knew you. It's like, so what else is left for me? It's the only thing that's left is how I love people, how I love my family, how I love the lost, how I want to be able to learn really quickly as younger Tai to see how Jesus sees.
Yeah.
Instead of getting so caught up. And it's like, man, there's always more money to make. There's always more opportunities to have. But man, being present in those moments is what matters more than anything. And so that for me is like slow down, basically slow down and learn to be still. Not just quiet. I know how to be quiet, but I don't know how to be still. And so learn to be still and learn how to be present in the moment. So that would be.
Yeah, that's awesome, bro. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to kind of talk about these things. I mean, it's pretty random, but kind of everything kind of worked out. And no, it's honestly good to talk to you. If people want to find you, and we didn't really get to talk about your occupation and all that stuff, but if people want to find you, where can they find you? What can they what can they expect from all of that stuff? So
Instagram is Tai Mahawon, and my website is taimahawon.com. But
Pretty simple.
like um what you expect to see is just like kind of I would say a testimony. You'll see the testimonies in my life, which is the records in my
Mm,
life.
mm,
And um yeah, I don't know why I said it that way, but yeah, that's true. Is my portfolio is my history, and
mm,
so hope it encourages anyone who is wanting to pursue whatever like occupation it is, whether it's music, whether it's ministry and stuff like that. It's like I hope it brings more hope. It's like because in Revelations it says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, which means if he did it once, he'll do it again. And so my testimony on the website is a prophetic word into your life, into
mm,
someone else's life, that if he did it for me, for sure he's going to do it for someone else.
mm.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll never take it for granted. So, but other than that, on the professional side, you'll see all the albums I worked on. And if you or your church wants to do like whether a consultation call, whatever, is like just hit me up. I'm a open book. Like, so if you send me a DM on Instagram, I'll answer any question you send. And if you need help with your church's live stream, albums, whatever, I'm able to help out.
Sweet. Tai, thank you so much.
Bro, of
Thanks.
course.
Honestly, you're freaking killing it over there. So keep on doing you and keep on doing what, I mean, honestly, keep on following what the Lord has for you because he's doing big things in your life, especially with this kid coming.
Yes, bro.
Yeah.
He's gonna be, he's gonna be a wild man if he's anything like his dad.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Your,
Okay, if
your,
you got huh?
your mom always says that. She's like, I'm scared to have your child. Every story she hears about my life, she's like, man, I'm scared to have your child. I was like, it's okay. It's gonna be
Don't worry
okay.
about it. Yeah,
Like,
don't worry about it.
we'll figure it out.
Thank you so much for listening to the Constant Pursuit podcast. If you guys like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys are looking to see what Tai is doing, make sure to go look down in the description down below with his socials and his website. Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube for the video version, or if you want to see the audio version, make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, and Audible. And we will see you in the next video. Peace out.